Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Madam?
Sir, I'm starting. There are a few points to adapt for a smooth, glitch-free webinar session. I am Aishwarya from Alpha Crown Technologies, the tech support for the day. To have a glitch-free webinar session, except for the videos of the panel speaker and co-host, all participant video will be switched off and mic will be kept in mute. Participant will not be able to unmute your mic. Requesting all the participants to choose the speaker view found in the top right hand corner of your screen for a rich view experience. To ask questions to the speaker, please use the chat box found in the bottom of your screen. For those participants logged using tab or mobile phone, the chat box is found under the More button. The host team will read the questions to the speaker on your behalf. If you need any assistance during the session, please reach me by sending a message in the chat box or use the hand raise option found in the bottom of the screen under the participants button. For the participants' kind information, this session is being recorded for official purposes. We are also going live in YouTube. The link is posted in the chat box for your kind usage. Requesting the participants' cooperation for a smooth and happy session. Thank you. Rajshekhar sir, the floor is yours.
Vanakkam. Good evening to everybody. I welcome all the participant registered and incoming participants to be going to be added in our Zoom meeting for this title, Trade in British Raj to Present India, the History of Money Making, by our chief guest, Sriram, the historian, and known to everybody through Hindu and other famous newspapers and other writings. Our chamber is conducting this kind of meetings in physical venue for so many years, for the past 75 years. But unfortunately, due to this COVID, we are forced to conduct this meeting virtually in Zoom meeting. Since we have to take the safety and security of all the participants. Now coming to this lecture by Mr. V. Sriram sir. In Tamil, people used to say, Assistant Royal Brahma Rishi Pattam அப்படின்னு. அந்த மாதிரி அவர் மிஸ்டர் எஸ் முத்தையாஸ், the famous historian late, who wrote column in Hindu. When I was in the board first time, some 10 years back in Chennai Port Trust, he was offered to make a coffee table book for the 125 years old Chennai Port, for which he readily agreed and made this book with wonderful pictures and writings. In the magnified functions conducted in those days with 8 central ministers, chief ministers, and shipping ministers, everybody, it was released and appreciated by many people. It is still for reference where people are using that. Under his training, Mr. Sriram sir, well versed in this history, heritage, and other aspects in writing, speaking in all form. Usually, people who are speak well don't ability to have the ability always to writings. But fortunately, our chief guest, Mr. Sriram, he speak well, write well, and he is contributing in so many fields apart from history and other heritage work, music, and by writing biographies. We will find it detailing later. after my speech. He is well versed in writing the history or heritage things interestingly with authentic informations useful for references, not only to raise the interest of the readers or the audience, but it will be make use for future references for any research purpose. That is his ability. I'm very much fond of him, and I heard his lecture in so many times. And interestingly, Mr. Muttaya also wrote an article about our R.K. Shanmugam, the first finance minister, 16, 17 years back in Hindu, upon my request. That is our first interaction with Muttaya sir. And some people will come to the field after a icon. But in this case, Mr. Sriram, during the period of historian Mr. Muttaya, he is able to come up at his own period with recognition. That is also one of the key things we have to notice. Sometimes we are not able to find that people of next generation to write or carry about something great things. Even in politics and other things also, we find in entertainment industry, வாரிசுங்களை கண்டுபிடிக்கிறதோ அடையாளப்படுத்துவதோ இல்லை அவங்க சக்சஸோ கொஸ்டினபிள் இருக்குது ஜென்ரலா சொல்லும்போது, நாட் பர்டிகுலர் கேசஸ். பட் இந்த கேஸ்ல அவர் முத்தையா சாரோட வாரிசு அப்படின்றத அவர் உயிரோட இருக்கும் போதே ஒரு அடையாளப்படுத்தி அங்கீகாரம் கிடைச்சி சொசைட்டில அக்செப்ட் பண்ண விஷயம் ரொம்ப பாராட்ட வேண்டிய ஒண்ணு. When introduced of Mr. Sriram sir for general audience, interestingly, he was born in 1966 in England, and whoever the right person to talk about the British trade, a person born in England, and completed his graduation with a Bachelor of Engineering degree in Delhi, the capital, and also post-graduation with a Master of Business MBA. In 1998, as Chief Operation Officer of Broadgate Technical Services India Private Limited, a software development firm based in Chennai, involved in family business of industrial hydraulics. Passion in Carnatic music, that is the other face of him. Since the age of 6, like a prodigy, conducting heritage walks during the Madras Week in August. He authorized the quiz book on Carnatic music, released his book in 2004, comprising biographies of 20 major exponents of Carnatic music, titled Carnatic Summer. He was invited by the Hindu to begin a monthly column titled Enco, which looks back at historic events in the world of Carnatic music. Written a chapter on music in Madras for the Madras Gazette, which is being published by the Association of British Scholars. Joined the board of Madras Musings and was appointed its associate editor. Now he is looking after the full chief in charge of that Madras Musings, which he keeps about writing latest article about the Midland Theatre, how a cycle company from North India became an entertainment owner, theatre owner, and how this transformation taking place, the release of Avayar by S.S. Vasan. Interestingly, yesterday I happened to hear the speech of Mr. Karu Painiyappan about this S.S. Vasan marketing strategy, about his Ashoka Mitran and other who is engaged in Gemini at the time. Coincidentally, he elaborated about this particular subject, how he marketed about this Avayar film, how he made 8 hours film was with him when he opened the cinema idea. After that, he made another 8 hours, 10 hours film and edited judicially to make it. And the famous Rajaji, the then chief minister at the time, came to that Midland Theatre to see the picture, which was made a big marketing issue at the time by the producers. Even the Chandralekha film also has a major trend about advertisement and other. Still, people, the entertainment industry of stalwarts talking about this Chandralekha film advertisement. And his biography of Bangalore, Nagaratnammal, a famed singer of history, is also released in 2007. He co-authored along with his guru S. Sri V. Subramaniam the book Semangudi Life. Is that our famous film singer Yesudas. He is a Shishya of Semangudi. Commenting the centenary of Maestro Srinivasa Iyer, and the book was released by none other than our APJ Abdul Kalam, the former President of India, the People's President of India. In our 75 years old history, a President of India celebrated, recognized, echoed everywhere from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, north, east, south, west, is Mr. Abdul Kalam. He released that book. His book titled Fourscore and More was on the history of music academy, Madras, and was co-authored with Malati Rangaswamy. He is currently working on a biography of Harikatha exponent, Sri Saraswati Bai. He is presently Secretary of the Music Academy, the prestigious institution for music. Since the passing of Mr. S. Muthiah, he has taken over as editor of Madras Museum, the fortnightly dedicated to the city, history, heritage, and culture. This is his profile for other audiences to know about it. Now, coming to the subject, the history of money making, trade in British Raj to present India. Actually, trade, the spice, is the reason for our colonization of India from British. Started through pepper and other spices only. The rest is known as history. The history of money making means, first of all, money making seems to be a bad by some people. Actually, money making is not a bad thing. As a Chamber of Commerce, as a trade and industry representative. But that money should come in a way properly regulated by the rules and regulations in general. That is the difference. Not that money making is an offense or crime. First of all, I want to clear that notion by some people and writing about so many articles and some other things about this. We are taking everything from the society. If you want to give something to the society, then we have to earn money. The purpose of my earning money is keeping our family, to educate for health and other, to make living, and also to make more comfort of our living. This is the basic thing. Then after completion, saturation of this, we have to do something to the society, which we have taken so many things. Even plant and vegetation, everything is releasing oxygen and other things to the people. We should give back to the society. Only the surplus money will lead the way to give back to society for anything. In those days, the community which built so many educational institutions, health institutions, even if we take our Tamil Nadu, the V.L. Ethraj, the famous lawyer, built an education college, Ethraj College for Women. Munshi, with all his assets earned, he built Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. Some health, Annamala University was built by the Nagarathar community. So all these are possible, which is benefiting the society, comes from the surplus money earned only. So the history of money making is not a bad word for it, no more. Fortunately, particularly India and more specific to Tamil Nadu, Aram Porul Inbam, அப்படின்னு திருவள்ளுவரோட திருக்குறள்லயே வந்து ஃபர்ஸ்ட் அறம் சார்ந்த வழியில பொருளை இட்டு இன்பத்தை தூக்கணும் அப்படின்றது அடிப்படை கோட்பாடா இருந்திருக்கு. வேர்ல்டுல எங்கேயும் இந்த அளவுக்கு ட்ரேடையோ ஒரு காமர்ஸையோ டிஃபைன் பண்ணது கிடையாது. மணி மேக்கிங்ன்ற வேர்டு ஏன் அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு நிலைமைக்கு போட்டு இங்கே தமிழ்நாட்டுல நாம எந்த வணிகத்தை, அதாவது கொல்வது மிகாமலும் கொடுப்பது குறையாமலும் அப்படின்ற வார்த்தையே வந்து இங்கதான் வந்தது. அதாவது வணிகத்தை சம்பந்தப்படுத்தி ஒரு பொருளை வாங்கும் போது அதுக்குரிய காசை கொடுக்கறது குறையாமலாம், அவங்க கிட்ட வாங்குற பொருளை மிக அதிகமாக கொடுத்ததுக்கு அதிகமா வாங்காமலும் இருக்கணும் அப்படின்ற ஒரு பேலன்ஸான ட்ரேடை மெயின்டைன் பண்ணணும். அறம் சார்ந்த வழியில செய்யும் தொழிலே தெய்வம், இது போன்ற இந்த மாதிரி யாதும் ஊரே யாவரும் கேள்வின்னு ஒரு காலத்துல வந்து நம்ம ஈவன் பிரிட்டிஷ் பீரியட்ல பிரிட்டிஷ் when they are coming to India in 1600 those period 2% of GDP was British GDP at that time, world share. In those days our Indian share is more than quarter of world GDP. After colonization of India only British share improved, even though we used to say exploited our resources and created so many things, but they give back some plus points also, making these railways and other infrastructures and other things, dealing in trade only. The main reason for British, this is one consolidation of India. You see, before that it was in different states, different people, different ruled by so many kings. The one thing achieved by the British rule is consolidation of India as a country. In 1858, East India Company handed over this legally to Queen Victoria. After that, British came into taking in charge of our country administration and all those things will dealt by our chief guest. Just want to give us small things to be shared with you only. So far explained. I don't want to stand in between our chief guest and the audience, and say audience are now coming only registering first. With this, I invite Mr. V. Sriram, the historian, writer, entrepreneur, speaker, to deliver his special address to our members. After that, interacting sessions will be there. People can post their questions in chat. So Aishwarya will moderate the questions and put these questions to him, and our chief guest will answer to you. Once again, I welcome all the participant members, others who registered so far, and they are also for future incoming registration audience. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Sriram for that very warm introduction. And I must say over here that he has invited me several times to come and speak in the chamber. And it was my fault that I had to say, no, this date was not convenient, that date was not convenient. Finally, he sent me a letter where he said, you can choose the date and make it on any date that is convenient to you. So then I had to respond. And then we selected this date. And I must firstly apologize for delaying the, coming to your chamber and speaking. But then, someday I had to come. So today I'm happy that I'm here and that I'm addressing you. Sriram also gave me the topic. And he said, this is, in fact, that letter very clearly says, you have to speak on this subject. So I said, okay, I've already done this topic once before. So I said, okay, I'll rework it a little. I'll add a few things. And then I said that I will make this speech. So that is where I would like to start. I am very happy that he also said that there is no point in saying that money making is an evil. Everybody needs money. None of us can survive without it. And even the religious establishments, the charitable institutions, every one of them needs money. And that money comes only from the surplus that is generated. I would also like to add here that it is a wrong thing to say that the trade began only with the coming of the English. As Mr. Sriram pointed out even in his introduction, there was a lot of trade. And during Mughal times, as he very rightly said, India was for a couple of years, India was right on top of the world GDP charts and it was the biggest, most prosperous nation for a couple of years during the Mughal era. So there is no doubt about it that we came from an exceedingly prosperous background. It is also not correct to say that Chennai came only because of the British. There was a lot of Chennai that existed before the arrival of the British. Okay, the identity of Madras or Chennai could have been given by the British, but we must remember that even that land grant document which the East India Company got, it very clearly says in the village of Chennapatnam, in the village of Madraspatnam. So Madras or Chennai appears to have existed. It may have been a small village, but it was there even before the coming of the British. Unfortunately, we know nothing about Madras or Chennai before the arrival of the British. But we know a lot about places like Mylapore, Thiruvattriyur, Thiruvanmiyur, Tirunirmalai, places like Pural, for instance, Ezhumbur. We know so much about these places. We know that Pallavaram was a Paleolithic settlement. பழம் கற்காலம் அப்படின்னு தமிழ்ல சொல்லுவோம். அங்க வந்து ஒரு பழம் கற்கால செட்டில்மெண்ட் ஒன்று இருந்திருக்கு பல்லாவரம்ல. அண்ட் இது வந்து 19வது நூற்றாண்டுல அதை வந்து when they were excavating it, it was the first Paleolithic find in the whole of Asia. Therefore, it indicates that பழம் கற்காலத்துல கூட இந்த சென்னை ஏரியால மக்கள் வாழ்ந்திருக்காங்க. இங்க வந்து அவங்க குடும்பம் நடத்தியிருக்காங்க. அப்போ வணிகமும் வர்த்தகமும் டெஃபினட்டா அப்பவும் நடந்திருக்கணும். ஒருவேளை காசு இருந்திருக்கா இல்லாம இருந்திருக்கலாம். ஆனா எக்ஸ்சேஞ்ச் ஒரு பார்ட்டர் சிஸ்டம், கொடுக்கல் வாங்கல்ல வந்து வர்த்தகம் நடந்திருக்கலாம், வணிகம் நடந்திருக்கலாம். So there must have been trade of some kind even at that point in history. When we look at the stone inscriptions in Thiruvattriyur, for instance, we know that business communities were living over here. செட்டியார்கள்லாம் இங்க இருந்திருக்காங்க. நகரத்தார்னு நம்ம இன்னைக்கு சொல்றோம். அவங்க இங்க இருந்திருக்காங்க. அவங்களோட வர்த்தகமும் வணிகமும் இங்கேருந்து நடந்திருக்கு. இப்போ பட்டினத்தார் சமாதி திருவொற்றியூர்ல, திருவொற்றியூர் கோவில்லேருந்து ஒரு 1/2 கிலோமீட்டர் தள்ளி போனீங்கன்னா பட்டினத்தார் சமாதி இருக்கு. இந்த பட்டினத்தார் வந்து நகரத்தார்களுக்கு வந்து ஒரு குருஸ்தானம் வகிக்கிறவர். அவர் எதுக்காக இங்க வந்திருக்கணும்? அப்போ இங்க முன்னாடியே வந்து நகரத்தார்கள் பல பேர் இங்க இருந்திருக்கணுங்கிறது தான் நமக்கு அதுலேருந்து தெரிய வருது. Therefore, this was a prosperous area with a lot of business communities living over here. In the 7th century, when Thirugnana Samandar comes to Mylapore, எதுக்காக மயிலாப்பூருக்கு வரார் திருஞான சம்பந்தர்? ஒரு செட்டியாருடைய மகள் அங்கம் பூம்பாவை வந்து அவ ஒரு அரவம் தீண்டு அவள் மரித்ததனால் அவளுக்கு வந்து அவளோட அஸ்தியை ஒரு கலசத்துல வச்சிருக்காங்க. ஒரு காலத்துல சம்பந்தர் வருவார் அப்படின்னு. சிவனேசன் செட்டியாருங்கிறவர் தான் அந்த பொண்ணோட அப்பா. அவர் ஒரு செட்டியாருங்கிறதுலேருந்தே நமக்கு என்ன தெரிய வருது? இங்கே அவர் வந்து ஒரு பிசினஸ் நடத்திட்டு இருந்திருக்கணும். அதுக்காக தான் அவர் மயிலாப்பூர்ல இருந்திருக்கணும். தொழிலும் இங்க நடந்திருக்கணும். திருவள்ளுவர் வந்து மயிலாப்பூர்லேருந்து தான் வந்தார் அப்படின்னு நம்ம ஒத்துக்கிறோம்னா, திருவள்ளுவர் வந்து கைத்தறி நெசவாளர் அப்படின்னு தானே நம்ம நம்புறோம். அப்போ அந்த நெசவு கைத்தறி இங்க டெஃபினட்டா நடந்திருக்குங்கிறது தெரிய வருது. So we know that there were businesses, there were communities, there was prosperity. All this was there even long before the British came in various villages that surrounded what finally became Madras or Chennai in 1639. So the British come here in 1639. ஆங்கிலேயர்கள் வந்து முதல்ல சென்னைக்கு வரல. They came to the west coast, they came to a place called Surat. முதல்ல ஜஹாங்கீர் காலத்துல வந்து ஒரு விண்ணப்பம் வச்சு இங்க நாங்க வந்து வணிகம் தொடக்கணும் அப்படின்னு சொன்ன பிறகு சூரத்ல தான் அவங்க பிசினஸ் ஆரம்பிக்கிறது. அதற்கு பிறகு மாச்சிலிப்பட்டினம்ல வந்து அவங்களுக்கு சக்சஸ் இல்லைங்கிறதுனால இங்க யாச்சகர்கள் மாதிரி வராங்க, தேடிட்டு வராங்க. எங்க வந்து பிசினஸ் சக்சஸ்ஃபுல்லா நம்மளால ஸ்தாபிக்க முடியும் அப்படின்னு தேடிட்டு இந்த ஏரியாவுக்கு வராங்க. அவங்களுக்கு முன்னாடியே போர்ச்சுகீஸும் இங்க இருக்காங்க, டச்சும் இங்க இருக்காங்க. The interesting thing is Fort St. George is exactly 3 kilometers from the Portuguese settlement of Santhome, and it is not very far away from the Dutch settlement of Pulicat, which is in the north. Palaverkadungra Pulicat. And the Dutch were the real business people. The Portuguese when they came here avanga oru periya oru vanigam inga nadathina mari namakku theriyala. ஆனா டச் இங்க வந்தபோது அவங்க ஒரே ஒரு குறிக்கோளோட தான் இங்க வந்தாங்க. அது என்ன குறிக்கோள்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா, இங்க இருக்கிற துணி, டெக்ஸ்டைல், the area that we recognize as Tondai Mandalam or Chola Mandalam today, this area was famous for textiles. In the textiles, they wanted to trade and they wanted to export it. எங்கெல்லாம் எக்ஸ்போர்ட் பண்ணாங்கன்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா they were exporting it to the far east, Philippines, Indonesia, அங்கெல்லாம் போயிட்டு இருந்தது. அதே they were taking it back to Europe. Eventually it will go to West Indies also. And when the Dutch came and settled in பழவேற்காடு, அவங்களுக்கு இந்த லோக்கல் மொழி தெரியாது. இந்த எப்படி அவங்களால பிசினஸ் நடத்த முடியும்? அதனால மொழி பெயர்ப்பாளர் தேவைப்பட்டது. இந்த மொழி பெயர்ப்பாளர்களுக்கு 2 மொழி தான் தெரியும். ஒன்று போர்ச்சுகீஸ், ஏன்னா ஏற்கனவே போர்ச்சுகீஸ் இங்கே சாந்தோம்ல இருந்ததுனால போர்ச்சுகீஸ் தெரியும். 2வது தமிழோ தெலுங்கோ தெரியணும். அதனால 2 மொழி தெரிந்ததுனால த்விபாஷி, அதுதான் பிறகு துபாஷ் அப்படின்னு கரப்டாகி துபாஷ் அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு டேர்ம் வருது. இவங்க பிசினஸ், டச் பிசினஸ் நடத்தினதே துபாஷை வச்சுட்டு நடத்தினது தான். ஆங்கிலேயர்கள் 1639 வருஷம் இங்கே வரைச்சு அவங்களும் இதே துபாஷ் சிஸ்டம் தான் ஃபாலோ பண்றாங்க. இன்ஃபேக்ட் when they come here there are 2 Englishmen and 2 Indians. First is Francis Day, the man who negotiates for the setting up of Chennai. The second is Andrew Cogan, who is his boss. He is in Machilipatnam, he comes down. But along with him, there is a translator called Beri Timappa. And there is a gunpowder maker called Nagabattan. These are the 4 people who come in 1639 to set up the city of Chennai. So there is a Dubash already present in the first transaction. Now the Dubash had a very, very lucky job. It was a very good job. ஏன்னா 2 பார்ட்டிக்குமே இன்னொரு பார்ட்டியோட மொழி தெரியாது. மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளருக்கு தான் எல்லாமே தெரியும். துரைக்கு தமிழோ தெலுங்கோ தெரியாது, துணி விற்கிறவனுக்கு இங்கிலீஷ் தெரியாது, மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளருக்கு 2ம் தெரியும். ஸோ அவன் எவ்வளோ பணம் பண்ணியிருப்பான் அதுலேருந்து நீங்கள் அனுமானம் பண்ணலாம், நீங்கள் யோஜனை பண்ணலாம். எப்படின்னா முதல்ல துரை இந்த துணிக்கு என்ன விலைன்னு கேட்டார்னா அவர் நெசவாளரை பார்த்து இது என்ன விலைப்பா அப்படின்னு உடனே 1 கஜத்துக்கு 1 ரூபான்னு சொன்னா வச்சுக்கோங்க, 10 ரூபா கேட்குறான் அப்படின்னு இங்கிலீஷ்காரன்ட்டு சொல்லுவார். அவன் எதுக்கு நான் 10 ரூபா கொடுக்கணும், நான் 5 ரூபா கொடுக்குறேன் அப்படிம்பான். திரும்பி பார்த்து அந்த நெசவாளர்கிட்ட துரை 1 ரூபாலாம் கொடுக்க முடியாது, 8 தான் கொடுக்க முடியும் அப்படின்னு சொல்றாரு. அந்த டிஃபரன்ஸ் ஆஃப் 4 rupees 50 paisa Dubash's pocket. So this is how the Dubashis made a lot of money. ஒரு இன்ஃபர்மேஷனை வித்ஹோல்ட் பண்ணி அதுல ப்ராஃபிட் பண்றது இன்னைக்கும் அது நடக்கிறது. The information is wealth, information is keen நம்ம சொல்றோம் இல்லையா, இது அப்பவே நடந்திருக்கு. The taking advantage of 2 parties that did not know what they were speaking, the man in the middle was making the money. But still there was a lot of profit in the textile business. So the British made money, they prospered, and they built this building that you see here, which is called Fort St. George, which even today is the administrative headquarters of the government of Tamil Nadu. Now let's proceed further. In the English people lived in Fort St. George, so that became Vellayargalpatnam or White Town. Immediately behind there came up a Black Town. Black Town was where all the Indians lived. இதுல ஒண்ணே நம்ம தெரிஞ்சுக்கணும், இது Black Town அது White Town இருந்ததுனால you cannot say that they were practicing racial discrimination. They were very clever. They came here for business. Privately அவங்க மைண்ட்ல நம்மள என்ன வேணாலும் நினைச்சிட்டு இருக்கலாம், ஆனா outwardly they knew that they could not do business without the support of the Indians. So lots of Indians also had property inside Fort St. George. The Dubashis were actually owning godowns inside Fort St. George. We have records of that. The English people were not very keen to move out and live in Black Town initially because they were afraid of their safety. So they were living inside White Town, but Indians were allowed to own property inside the fort. Therefore, it is wrong to say that there was racial discrimination between White Town and Black Town. Because the whites lived there, that became Vellayargalpatnam. Because Indians lived here, it became Karuppargalpatnam or Black Town. This is Georgetown road or photograph taken in the early 1900s. Now, what was the services that these Indians were providing to the people in Fort St. George? Firstly, the translating was a very important activity. Second thing that you must remember, that if the English wanted to buy cloth, they had to pay for buying the cloth. And the payment had to be made in advance. You could not get the cloth and then pay for it. The man who wove the cloth, he needed money in advance so that he could buy the yarn and then he could take up the spinning. And therefore, the East India Company needed money all the time. This money used to come in gold and silver, from England. Very often the ships would not come because it would take 6 months for the ships to come from England to Madras. In the middle, they could be sunk by cyclone. There could be a pirate attack. Enemy ships could come and destroy them. Very often the ships did not come. So the East India Company needed money. Now, where did they go for money? They needed money lenders. So, மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளர் ஒரு பக்கம்னா பணம் கொடுக்கிறவங்க லேவாதேவி பண்றவங்க. They were the next set of people who came. So you found Nagaratars coming. You found the Andhra Chettis coming. Arya Vaishya community in சொல்லுவோம் இல்லையா, அவங்க வந்தாங்க. Gujaratis came, the Jains came, and the Marwadis came. They all settled down in this area, which eventually became Sahukarpet, or Sahukarnale and a money lender dhan. So they settled down here, which is why the area is even today known as Saukarpet. Now, once the Indians settled down over here, they needed other services also. So you had singers, you had dancers, you had musicians, you had suppliers of provisions. So a whole city began to establish itself surrounding this region, and lot of businesses began to get activated in old Madras. இன்னைக்கு நம்ம ஒன்று சொல்றோம், களி முத்திடுச்சு, தண்ணி வந்து காசு கொடுத்து வாங்க வேண்டியிருக்கு அப்படின்னு சொல்றோம். 1639 வருஷமும் காசு கொடுத்து தான் தண்ணி வாங்கிட்டு இருந்தாங்க சென்னையில. ஒண்ணுமே மாறினது கிடையாது. ஏன்னா ஃபோர்ட் செயின்ட் ஜார்ஜ்ல தேர் வாஸ் நோ சோர்ஸ் ஆஃப் ஃப்ரெஷ் வாட்டர். 3 கிலோமீட்டர் தள்ளி 7 கிணறுங்கிற இடத்துல வந்து மண்ணடிக்கு தாண்டி போய் ராயபுரம்க்கும் ஜார்ஜ் டவுனுக்கும் நடுவில் இருக்கிற ஒரு இடத்துல 7 கிணறு வெட்டினாங்க. அங்கதான் நல்ல தண்ணி இருந்தது. அங்கேருந்து டெய்லி மாட்டு வண்டியில அந்த தண்ணி வரும் ஃபோர்ட் செயின்ட் ஜார்ஜுக்கு. ஆங்கிலேயர்களும் காசு கொடுத்து தான் தண்ணி வாங்கிட்டு இருந்தாங்க. ஸோ தண்ணி சப்ளை பண்றதும் ஒரு பிசினஸா தான் இருந்திருக்கு அந்த டைம்ல. People were making money even by the sale of water. Later on, of course, they laid pipeline and they had the supply of water. Even now in Georgetown, there is a road called Baker Street. George Baker was the man who laid the pipeline from Seven Wells up to Fort and began supplying piped water thereafter. That is why he is remembered even today in Georgetown, the first man who supplied piped water. So you had to pay for buying water even at that time. Now, how did the English do their business? இப்போ வந்து வணிக வளாகம் அப்படின்லாம் சொல்றோம் நம்ம வந்து கமர்ஷியல் what do you call it? Commercial complex. We say there is a building of offices, that's a commercial complex, etc. The first commercial complex in the city is this building. இதை வந்து இன்னைக்கு வந்து கோட்டையோட அருங்காட்சியகம் அப்படின்னு சொல்றோம், the Fort Museum. இங்கே தான் வந்து 1750-60களில் வந்து கட்டப்பட்ட கட்டடம் இது. This was the Fort Exchange. The ground floor, they had a bank because that is where the money used to be exchanged. On the first floor, the merchants would be waiting, and from here they got a direct view of the sea, Bay of Bengal. There, the ships will be coming. When the ships come, they will get messages as to what is the commodity that is coming in the ship, how much of gold is coming, how much of silver is coming, glass, how much of glassware is coming. Based on that, the prices of the commodities will go up and down. So this became the first commodity exchange in the entire southern region. Even today, this building is known as the Exchange Building, or it is known as the Exchange Museum. Even today, you can go to this building and you can see from here. On top of this building, the British put up the first lighthouse in Chennai. கலங்கரை விளக்கமோட முதல் கலங்கரை விளக்கம் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா இங்கே தான் இருந்தது. 1780களில் வந்து கட்டப்பட்ட லைட் ஹவுஸ் அது, the first lighthouse of Madras, and that came up on top of this because the ships had to know where they had to come. But the ships could not come up to the shore of Chennai. They had to stop 2 miles in the sea because in those days all the ships were made of, they operated on wind power, and the sea near Chennai was always very rough. Ships could not make it, so they would wait 2 miles in the sea. இங்கேருந்து கட்டுமரம் போகும். கட்டுமரம் வந்து போய் அங்கே இருக்கிற கமாடிட்டி ஷிப்ஸில் என்னெல்லாம் வந்திருக்கோ அதை எல்லாத்தையும் இறக்கி கட்டுமரத்தில் தான் எடுத்துகிட்டு வருவாங்க. பேசஞ்சர்ஸும் அதில் தான் வருவாங்க, குட்ஸும் அதில் தான் வரும். அந்த கட்டுமரம் ஆப்ரேட்டர்ஸ் பிகேம் அ மொனாபலி. தே மேட் மனி பிகாஸ் the government, the public, everybody needed that service. It became a vital transport system for taking people from the city to the ship, bringing people from the ship to the city. Goods had to be taken from the city to the ships. Goods had to be brought from the ships to the city. Now, what happens when you control a monopoly? You become very powerful. So the boat operators became very powerful men. And they used to go on strike. இப்போ ஆட்டோ ரிக்ஷா ஸ்ட்ரைக் வந்ததுன்னா என்ன ஆகுது? அதே தான் அப்பவும் நடந்திருக்கு. And the same behavior of the auto rickshaw you find in the behavior of the boatmen. They would stop the boat in the middle of the sea when it was very rough, and they would demand more money from the passengers. If the passenger did not give it, they would push them into the water. And then another man will save that person, and he would pay money for being saved. Many of the goods would fall into the sea. Somebody will be waiting underneath to catch the goods, and next day it will be sold on the streets at a place called thieving bazaar. இன்னைக்கு அது ஈவினிங் பஜார் ரோட் அப்படின்னு நம்ம சொல்றோம். அந்த காலத்துல அதுக்கு thieving bazaarனு பேர். ஏன்னா stolen goods would come there to be sold in that particular location. So this is how the trade was going on. And இந்த கட்டு மரத்துல தான் எல்லாத்தையும் எடுத்துன்னு வந்ததுனால தான் ஆங்கிலேயத்துல இன்னைக்கும் ஒரு வார்த்தை இருக்கு. ஆங்கிலத்துல catamaran. The catamaran, the word comes from the Tamil kattu maram. Similarly, when we made மிளகு ரசம், that became maligatoni, which became their soup. அவங்க வந்து நம்ம கிட்டக்க எல்லாம் கத்துண்டாங்கன்னு நம்ம நினைக்க கூடாது. நம்மளும் அவங்க கிட்ட இருந்து வார்த்தையெல்லாம் எடுத்துட்டு இருக்கோம். ஒருத்தர் குண்டா இருந்தா அதுக்கு என்ன சொல்றோம்? பீப்பா மாதிரி இருக்கார் அப்படின்னு சொல்றோம் இல்லையா? இந்த பீப்பாங்கிற வார்த்தை வந்து போர்ச்சுகீஸ்ல இருந்து வந்திருக்கு. அந்த காலத்துல the Portuguese Madeira wine used to be transported in barrels that were known as peeps. The English word for those barrels was peeps, and they used to be rounded like this. The peeps became pipa in Tamil, and eventually, even today, we use that term. Similarly, the word for toilet, the colloquial word for toilet, kakusnu solron இல்லையா? அத பல பேர் வந்து ஐயோ இப்படி இந்த மாதிரி வார்த்தையெல்லாம் யூஸ் பண்றாங்க அப்படின்னு ரொம்ப ஸ்டைலா சொல்லுவாங்க. இது ஒரு டச் வேர்ட். இது kak-huis. Kak-huis is the Dutch word for toilet. அதுலேருந்து நம்ம பாஷைக்கு வந்திருக்கு. So there is, we are actually very fashionable when we use that word. We are actually using a Dutch word, and we are showing how we know so many foreign words. So இதெல்லாம் வணிகத்திலையும் வர்த்தகத்திலையும் வந்த வார்த்தைகள் தான் இன்னைக்கு நம்ம இதை யூஸ் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கோம். And in the boatmen were so powerful that the Urdu term for these boatsmen is sarhang. இன்னைக்கும் நீங்க வந்து ஜார்ஜ் டவுனுக்கு போறீங்கன்னா ஜாஃபர் சைராங் ஸ்ட்ரீட், நாராயண் சைராங் ஸ்ட்ரீட்னு 2 தெரு இருக்கு. Those streets are named after master boatmen who were controlling the boating that was going to and fro between the sea and the city. So this service continued till 1875, 1880, till the harbor was completed. And as Mr. Shoyanachar mentioned, Mr. Muthaya brought out a beautiful book on the construction of the Madras harbor. So the harbor, of course, was a very different story. But till the harbor came, every good and every passenger had to be offloaded onto the Kattumaram and then brought into the city. ஒரு ஆளை இறக்கிறதோ ஒரு ஐட்டமை இறக்கிறதோ ஒன்றும் பெரிய விஷயம் கிடையாது. ரயில்வே இன்ஜினையும் அப்படிதான் இறக்கினாங்கன்னா நீங்க நம்புவீங்களா? 13 டன் ஒரு இன்ஜினோட எடையும். அந்த என்ஜினை வந்து மேனுவல் கிரேனால 1856 வருஷம் கிரேனை வச்சு கப்பல்லேருந்து கட்டுமரத்துக்கு இறக்கி அந்த என்ஜினை வந்து அதே மாதிரி இவங்க கையால ஓர் பண்ணி ஐலசான்னு பாடிண்டு அங்கேருந்து எடுத்துன்னு வந்து சென்னை மாநகரத்துக்கு கொண்டு வந்திருக்காங்க. 4 engines came that way. They were the heaviest consignment ever offloaded onto a catamaran. அது எப்படின்னா அந்த கட்டுமரம் ஒரு தடவையும் இன்ஜினை கொண்டு வந்த உடனே தூளா போயிடும். திரும்பி புது கட்டுமரம் கட்டி அதை எடுத்துட்டு போய் அடுத்த என்ஜின் எடுத்துட்டு வரணும். ஒரு என்ஜினை இறக்கிறதுக்கு 1.5 நாள் ஆயிருக்கு. ஸோ 4 என்ஜின் வந்ததுன்னா நீங்க அதுலேருந்து பார்த்துக்கலாம் 6 நாள் ஆயிருக்கு. 4 என்ஜினை இறக்கிறதுக்கு ஊருக்கே லீவ் விட்டு எல்லாரையும் அங்க வந்து பார்க்க வச்சிருக்காங்க. இது இப்படி ஒரு காட்சி உங்களால பார்க்க முடியாது, பாருங்க எப்படி நடக்கிறது அப்படின்னு சொல்லி. சென்னை மாநகரத்துல அந்த காலத்துல இருந்தவங்க எல்லாரும் அதை போய் பார்த்துருக்காங்க. 1854, 55, 56 அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு வருஷத்துல. மன்றோ சிலை கூட அப்படிதான் கட்டுமரம்ல இறக்கி தான் வந்து ஊருக்குள்ள கொண்டு வந்திருக்காங்க. 3 பார்ட்டா கொண்டு வந்தது மன்றோ சிலைய. குதிரை தனி, மன்றோட தலை தனி, கத்தி அண்ட் அவர் கையில இருக்கிறதோ சம்திங் அது தனி. 3 பார்ட்டா கொண்டு வந்து ஒன்னா அசெம்பிள் பண்ணி அதற்கு பிறகு இன்னைக்கு மவுண்ட் ரோட்ல இந்த சிலை நின்றுட்டு இருக்கு. ஸோ திஸ் இஸ் ஹவு ட்ரேட் வாஸ் கண்டினியூயிங் இன் தோஸ் பர்டிகுலர் டேஸ். The Dubashis became very powerful, as I told you, and they made a lot of money. Many of them were very corrupt. நீங்க ஜார்ஜ் டவுன்ல நீங்க பாத்தீங்கன்னா பல தெரு இருக்கு. இன்னைக்கு கூட நம்ம பார்க்கலாம். அப்பா எத்தனை தெரு இருக்கு ஜார்ஜ் டவுன்ல. அங்கப்ப நாயக்கன் தெரு, லிங்கிச்செட்டி ஸ்ட்ரீட், தம்பு செட்டி ஸ்ட்ரீட், எரபாலு செட்டி ஸ்ட்ரீட், நைனியப்ப நாயக்கன் ஸ்ட்ரீட். இவங்க எல்லாரும் துபாஷ் தான். எல்லாரும் மொழிபெயர்த்து பணம் பண்ணினவங்க. அண்ட் அந்த பணத்துல அந்தந்த ஏரியால பெரிய பெரிய வீடுகள் கட்டி அவங்களுடைய பிசினஸ் ஹவுசஸ் கட்டி அதெல்லாம் தான் இன்னைக்கு வீடுகளாகவும் கடைகளாகவும் இருக்கு. எல்லாரும் ஆனா கரெக்டா இருந்தது கிடையாது. பல பேர் நல்ல காரியத்துக்கும் பணம் செலவழிச்சிருக்காங்க. அதுல வள்ளல் பச்சையப்ப முதலியாரும் ஒரு துபாஷ் தான். அவர் இருந்தது 40 வருஷம் தான். 1744வது வருஷம் ஐ திங்க் பிறந்ததுன்னு நினைக்கிறேன்னா 1794வது வருஷம் போயாச்சு. அவருக்கு 50 வயசு கூட இல்லை அவர் போறச்சே. 54வது வருஷம் பிறந்து 94வது வருஷம் போயிட்டாருன்னு நினைக்கிறேன். 40 வருஷம் தான் இருந்திருக்காரு. அதுல அவர் he was a multi-millionaire and the money that he left was supposed to be used for temples and for charitable purposes. அதுக்கப்புறமா அவங்களோட சந்ததியில வந்தவங்க 50 வருஷம் அந்த சொத்துக்கு சண்டை போட்டிருக்காங்க ஹைகோர்ட்ல. அது இன்ட்ரெஸ்ட் குட்டி போட்டு அந்த பணம் ரொம்ப ஒரு பெரிய தொகையா மாறி போயிடுச்சு அதுக்குள்ள. By the time the settlement came, the government decided that after all the charities that Pachayappa Mudaliyar wanted, there was a lot of money left. They said, we will start the Pachayappa Trust. And with that, we will start colleges. So Dubash actually funded the creation of the Pachayappa's College Trust. And today, if there are colleges like that, it is because of people like him. So that is how the interest of businessmen getting into educational institutions, நீங்க பாத்தீங்கன்னா அப்புறம் பல பேர் பண்றாங்க. First businessman whose money was finally spent for education பாத்தீங்கன்னா வள்ளல் பச்சையப்ப முதலியார் தான். Englishmen start coming here and they begin to start doing business. ஈஸ்ட் இந்தியா கம்பெனி தான் வந்து பிசினஸ் ஏஜென்சின்னு நம்ப முடியாது. அந்த காலத்துல எப்படி ஒரு ரூல் இருந்திருக்குன்னா சில கமாடிட்டிஸ் வந்து கம்பெனி மூலமா தான் ட்ரேட் பண்ண முடியும். சில கமாடிட்டிஸ் நீங்க பிரைவேட் கெப்பாசிட்டியில ட்ரேட் பண்ணலாம். பட் த ஈஸ்ட் இந்தியா கம்பெனி சர்வெண்ட் cannot do business privately. ஸோ அதனால என்ன பண்ணாங்க, பேனாமி டிரான்சாக்ஷன் இப்போ ஒன்று இருக்கு தெரியுமா, என் பேர்ல இருக்காது வேற யாரோட பேர்லயோ நடக்கும். அது ஆங்கிலேயர்கள் தான் நமக்கு முதல்ல கற்றுக் கொடுத்தது. அவங்க என்ன பண்ணாங்க, உடனே அவங்க ஊர்ல இருக்கிற அவங்களோட மச்சானோ மாப்பிள்ளையோ தம்பியோ யாரையாவது கூட்டிட்டு வந்துருவாங்க. இங்க என்னால வந்து என்னோட பேர்ல தொழில் நடத்த முடியாது, உன் பேர்ல நீ தொழில் நடத்திக்கோ, ஆனா ப்ராஃபிட்ல எனக்கு ஒரு கட் இருக்கணும். ஏன்னா அது இன்ஃப்ளூயன்ஸ் வச்சு தானே, நான் என்னோட இன்ஃப்ளூயன்ஸ் வச்சு தானே உன்னோட தொழில் நடக்குது. So the first Benami transactions was all started by the East India Company servants, bringing their relatives from abroad, getting them to settle over here and start doing business which they cannot do officially. So these were known as free merchants. They were merchants who were free. They were not under the control of the East India Company. Thomas Parry, இன்னைக்கும் முருகப்பா group, part of முருகப்பா group ஓட ஒரு part வந்து Parry and Company. And today it is the second oldest registered company in the whole of India after Forbes and Campbell in Bombay. So Parry and Company was founded in 1788 by Thomas Parry, whose picture you see over here, portrait you see over here. Parry came to Madras because his uncle Patrick Ross was working in the East India Company. Then he started business in leather. First business Parry ஆரம்பிச்சது வந்து தோல் பொருள் தான், leather. 1805ல சாந்தோம்ல இன்னைக்கும் லீத் காசல் ஸ்ட்ரீட்னு ஒரு இடம் இருக்கு. அங்கதான் இந்தியாவோட ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ஆர்கனைஸ்ட் இண்டஸ்ட்ரி அப்படின்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா அதுதான் அந்த லெதர் ஃபேக்டரி தட் தாமஸ் பாரி ஸ்டார்டட். இன்னைக்கு சென்னை இஸ் தி செகண்ட் லார்ஜஸ்ட் எக்ஸ்போர்ட்டர் ஆஃப் leather goods in the whole country, or rather Tamil Nadu is the second largest and Chennai is the headquarters of that business, the first being Allahabad or Kanpur and the second is Chennai. The first starting of that was Thomas Parry getting into the leather business. Then we had John Binney whose photograph you see, portrait you see over here in black and white. Innikum Connemara Hotel pora road per Binney Road da. It is named after John Binney. His house is where the Connemara Hotel is today. He started Binney and Company. இங்க சின்னவங்களுக்கெல்லாம் தெரியாம இருக்கலாம், ஆனா மிஸ்டர் சோழநாச்சியாருக்கு டெஃபினட்டா தெரியும், எனக்கும் நல்லா நினைவு இருக்கு. பிறந்ததுலேருந்து 12ஆம் கிளாஸ் படிச்ச வரைக்கும் யூனிஃபார்ம் எல்லாம் பின்னி யூனிஃபார்ம் தான் நம்ம எல்லாருமே போட்டுட்டு ஸ்கூலுக்கு போனோம். The cloth came from Binney and therefore Binney was one of the biggest employers in the city. இன்னைக்கு நீ நம்ப மாட்டோம், நம்புற மாதிரியும் இல்லை. ஆனா 1925ல எத்தனை பேர் பின்னில வேலை பார்த்திருக்காங்கன்னா 20,000 பேர் வேலை பார்த்திருக்காங்க பின்னில 1925ல. கம்ப்யூட்டர்ஸே இல்லாத காலத்துல எப்படி சம்பள விநியோகம் பண்ணினாங்க, எப்படி கணக்கு மெயின்டைன் பண்ணினாங்கங்கிறது நினைச்சாலே நமக்கு மலைப்பா இருக்கு. ஆனா 20,000 பேர் வேலை பார்த்திருக்காங்க பின்னி அண்ட் கம்பெனில 1925ல. இட் வாஸ் ஒன் ஆஃப் த பிக்கெஸ்ட் எம்ப்ளாயர்ஸ் இன் த கண்ட்ரி. பின்னி அண்ட் கம்பெனி இந்த ஸ்வதேசி இயக்கம்னு வந்தது இல்லையா, ஃபாரின் குட்ஸ் எல்லாம் பேன் பண்ணணும், இதை யூஸ் பண்ணக்கூடாது. அப்போ பின்னி அண்ட் கம்பெனியோட குட்ஸையும் பேன் பண்ணணும் அப்படின்னு ஒரு மூவ் வந்தது. அதை அப்போஸ் பண்றதுக்கு the people represented to Mahatma Gandhi and said you cannot ban Binni goods. Binni goods are locally made and the city's economy depends upon Binni and company. And Mahatma Gandhi said Binni can be exempted. You don't have to boycott Binni's goods. Please continue using Binni's products. So that was the importance of Binni and company. Today, of course, the company is not there, but it was one of the biggest companies in its time. I told you about the construction of the harbor in 1875. This was one of the biggest projects that was undertaken by the people, actually the business community of Chennai. Nobody wanted a harbor to be constructed in Madras. Bombay was the mercantile capital of the country. Calcutta was the administrative capital of the country. Colombo was a very big port in Sri Lanka, in Ceylon. Between these three cities, they completely prevented any construction of a harbor in Madras for 200 years. The city was founded in 1639. It was only in 1875 that the work on the harbor really started. And why did it start? Because the merchants of Madras kept representing, saying that we are sick and tired of going in catamarans and coming back in catamarans. How much of trade is getting affected because heavy commodities cannot be offloaded into the city. They have to go to Colombo, or they've got to go to Calcutta, or they've got to go to Bombay. And this cannot be going on. Finally, in 1875, the government began the harbor works. This was entirely because of two organizations, the Madras Chamber of Commerce and the Madras Trades Association. These were the two bodies that really fought for the construction of the harbor. And finally, in around 1914 or so, the harbor was completed. The interesting thing is, before the harbor was built, nobody believed that Chennai could become a business capital. Everybody said Calcutta is the big city, Bombay is the business capital, Madras has got no future. This was the general opinion of everybody. Suddenly, when the harbor was completed, things began to change. Because in the south, now you had a proper harbor, a city from which goods could be exported, and business began to boom. In the First World War, Chennai was the only city in India to be bombed. The harbor of Madras was bombed by the Emden, the ship called the Emden. But in the Second World War, what happened was that Chennai was the only harbor that was not threatened by the enemy forces. Because Colombo was bombed, Calcutta was almost going to fall to the Japanese, Kakinada had been bombed, only Madras harbor was safe. And suddenly you found all the American troops were landing over here, all the goods that were required were being transferred from here, and all the army establishments came and settled down in a place called Avadi. Even today, you have CVRD, Heavy Vehicles Factory, Engine Factory. They are all in Avadi. There is a rumor that Avadi means Armored Vehicles and Defense Industries. That is wrong, because Avadi Gramo has been around from 1700 onwards. It is just a convenient name that people have chosen to reinterpret today and give it this explanation. But all the defense industries settled down in Avadi because Chennai was the only safe city during the Second World War. And you will not believe that the population of the city doubled during the Second World War. Prior to the Second World War, our population was 4 lakhs. After the Second World War, our population was 8 lakhs. Of course, today it's gone to huge numbers. But that was the beginning of the transformation of Chennai as a city because of the security it provided and because of the harbor. Now, thanks to booming business, all the British companies settled down in a place called First Line Beach. Today, we recognize it as Rajaji Salai. This is where all the British companies built their headquarters from 1799 onwards. The edge of this area is even today known as Parry's Corner, because Parry and Company had its headquarters there, their house, and today it is the headquarters of the Murugappa Group. That that company has been in that location from the 1790s onwards. It must be a world record that one company has been in the same address for so many years. And next to it, you had companies like Best and Company, Arbuthnot and Company, Beardsell and Company. All of them established their headquarters on this particular road. So in 1850s, when the railways came to Madras, the business community said the railway station must be close to where we are, which is why the railway station came up in Royapuram. And today it is the oldest railway station in the whole country. And it is still there. So the Royapuram railway station came there because of the business community. Where is the GPO, the General Post Office? It is also on Rajaji Saleh. Because the business community said we have to have the postal services where we are. Where is the State Bank of India headquarters? Also on Rajaji Saleh, because when it was the Imperial Bank, the business community said we have to have the bank headquarters over here. So all the important services came up on this particular road. Now, at that time, you had a very powerful company called Arbuthnot and Company. In the English companies, they all had one drawback. They did not like any Indian to succeed in business. They only wanted Indians to be clerks and to work in their companies in a subordinate capacity. They did not like the encouragement of any Indian to set up a business on his own. And Indians also did not want to get into business, except for the traditional mercantile community, the Nagaratars, and the Arya Vaishya community. Nobody else wanted to get into business. And even the Nagaratar and the Arya Vaishya community, they did not want to become industrialists. They wanted to be traders. They wanted to buy goods and sell goods at a margin. They did not want to get into manufacturing. Now, in 1906, you had a very big company. It was the biggest company of Madras Presidency. It was called Arbuthnot and Company. On October 22nd, 1906, Arbuthnot and Company became insolvent. And they put up a notice outside their headquarters. This is the building that you see on First Line Beach. They put up a notice outside on the entrance of the company that the company has declared insolvency. Its managing partner, Patrick McFadden, committed suicide in London by throwing himself in front of a running train in Victoria Station. Thousands of people in Tamil Nadu, or Madras as it was at that time, became insolvent because of the collapse of Arbuthnot and Company. Because it was a bank. They had placed all their savings with Arbuthnot and Company, including the governor of Madras, Sir Arthur Lawley. Even he became financially insolvent because even his money was with the Arbuthnot. When Arbuthnot collapsed, Indians suddenly realized that British companies are not all that great. They could probably run a business as well as a British company. That is when we had a lawyer called V. Krishnaswamy Iyer, who said that if the British are running a bank that can collapse, Indians can surely do better. Let Indians come together and start a bank. So with the help of Raja Sir Annamalai Chettiar, then there was a very famous Muslim gentleman who was into leather, Abdul Hakim and others. He founded a bank. And what was the name that he gave the bank? Because it was founded by Indians, the bank was called the Indian Bank. And that was the first great Indian, a bank founded by Indians on the same scale as a British bank. Eventually, Indian Bank would buy Arbuthnot and Company's headquarters. You can see from this photograph taken in 1931 that it is called Indian Bank Buildings. This was originally Arbuthnot and Company building. Then later on, they demolished it and they built the multi-storied Indian Bank building that is even today standing on Rajaji Saleh. Arbuthnot Bank was exactly in the same place where the Indian Bank headquarters is today. Now, once the Indians founded a bank, they also wanted to start a chamber of commerce. Because the British-run companies were all members of what was called the Madras Chamber of Commerce and Industry. They did not like any Indians becoming a member of the Madras Chamber of Commerce. So the Indians got together and started what was called the Southern India Chamber of Commerce, SICC. That was in 1906, 1907. Thereafter, your own Chamber of Commerce, Tamil Chamber of Commerce, comes up in the 1940s, founded, I think, by Sir R.K. Shanmugam Chetty, if I'm not mistaken. Thereafter, we find that gradually Indians begin to become bolder. They want to start businesses. They want to get into financial services. So Indians suddenly realize that life insurance is is a very good business to be in. Fire insurance is a very good business to be in. Motor and vehicle insurance is a good business to be in. So they all start getting into financial services, stock exchange. So the Madras Stock Exchange is founded in the 1930s. By the time, Indians are into stockbroking also. So gradually, the collapse of Arbuthnot and Company is what gives Indians the confidence that they can also do business well, and therefore they get into that area. Now, at this time, manufacturing is not something that Indians are wanting to get into. In 1911, the government of Madras sets up what is called the Department of Industries. Today, the government of India has got a Department of Industry. But at that time, the government of Madras was the first presidency to start a department for industries. They wanted to encourage Indians to start industries on their own. The British companies protested. They went to Calcutta and they ensured that the Department of Industry in Madras was closed. But the Indians were not going to give up. They also raised a protest, and finally, 2 years later, the Department of Industries was reinstated. And two men were put in charge of encouraging Indians to get into business. The man on the left is Sir Alfred Chatterton, who was then the principal of the College of Engineering, which is today Anna University. And the man on the right is Sir Frederick Nicholson, who was an ICS officer. Both these men put their heads together and they said, what is wrong with Indians starting business? Swadeshi is a very good thing. This is what they said. They said Swadeshi is a very good thing. Indians must start business on their own. But how do you encourage Indians to start business? They don't know how to start manufacturing. So they said, let the government start the manufacturing. Run the company for 2 years successfully. Then sell the company to Indians. So Sir Frederick Nicholson starts making soap. Sir Alfred Chatterton starts making pencils. And 2 years after the Madras Pencil factory was founded, the government sells it to V. Perumal Chetty and Sons. All of us grew up writing and drawing using pencils from Madras Pencil Factory. That was the first manufacturing entity set up by Indians in Tamil Nadu. And after that, we slowly got into several other areas. Now, you may think that business is all about the upper class people, the people who are educated, the people who came from the traditional business communities. What about the backward communities, the community that today we recognize by the word of Dalit? Now, how did they get into business? There is a very interesting success story. And unfortunately, as you know, in India, the greatest drawback of India is its caste system. One of the worst things that can happen to any country is the segregation on the basis of caste. Now, when the English came and settled over here, the Indian upper caste people did not like working in the houses of the Englishmen because they were foreigners, they ate meat and things like that. It was only the Dalits who went and began to work for the British houses. Many of them used to work as cook, some of them would work as gardeners, some of them would work as ayahs, and so on and so forth. One of them was P. Venkatachalam. When P. Venkatachalam began to cook in the house of a British businessman, his curry and his sauces became so popular that everybody would go to the house of that businessman just to ask for a bottle of Venkatachalam cookoda curry sauce and a konjam abdin solli they would take it home. When the Englishman retired and went back to England, he began to ask for Venkatachalam to send him bottles of those sauces. And so gradually, Venkatachalam established a successful business empire, which was exporting PV condiments and sauces to not just England, but to Australia, to various parts of Europe. And he became so successful that he was owning 75 huge properties in Chennai, all of which he was renting out to English people. They were living in those houses. Today, you know, many of the bungalows that you see on Green Base Road, the ministers' bungalows, Tendral, Mallihai, Podihai, all this was P. Venkatachalam property at one time. And all the government ICS officers were living in it and they were paying rent to Venkatachalam. That Venkatachalam's grandson was the husband of Srimati Jyoti Venkatachalam, whose photograph I have put up over here. Jyoti Venkatachalam, who fought for freedom, later on became a minister in the Rajaji government. No, I think in Kamraj government, not Rajaji government, in the Kamraj government, finally became a governor of Kerala. So there was opportunity for anybody and everybody. Now, with the establishment of the harbor, petrol began to come, cars began to come. Lots of car companies began to be set up over here. Simpson and Company, Addison and Company. These were all companies that were into other businesses before. When they saw a big opportunity in cars, they all started getting into cars. And then you had Indians getting into the car sales business. So Rane Madras came into existence, were trading in cars. Several other companies of that kind, they all started getting into the car activity. Now in 1944, 45, independence was coming, Second World War was raging, and the British were very clearly leaving. At that time, Indians began to sense a very great opportunity, and they realized that they could get more and more into manufacturing. Anantharamakrishnan, who was an auditor, he was then working for Simpson and Company, and he was on the board of Simpson and Company. He got his British bosses to found a company called Amalgamations and Company, which would take over all the British business houses whose owners were keen on selling and leaving and going back to England. Gradually, he began to acquire those companies. And under Amalgamations came Simpsons, Addisons, George Oaks, Higginbothams, The Mail, and then in Coimbatore, Tea Stains and Company. And he began to acquire all these companies, and it became one of the biggest conglomerates. Then in 1947, and when Indian independence came, and the government of India passed an industrial policy resolution saying that we need to start heavy industries in the country. Anantharamakrishnan was the man who realized that automotive business will be one of the biggest businesses in this country. And he set up India's first automotive component manufacturing company, India Pistons, in 1949. And after that came TAFE and several other companies that he founded. Similarly, the other man you see over here, MCT Chidambaram Chettiar. See, we go and read only American millionaires' history. Business success na odane Bill Gates, illata vande Steve Jobs, idudha namak theriyum. Number backyard la irundha business success patti we have no idea. We never celebrate these people. MCT Chidambaram Chettiar, whose family founded United India Insurance, Indian Overseas Bank, and then later, today we all celebrate the Ambanis. But the first man to recognize the importance of polyester fiber was MCT Chidambaram Chettiar. He started Travancore Rayons in Travancore, the first polyester filament factory in the whole country. This man died in an air crash in Singapore when he was just 50 or so. Had he lived, we don't know what our business history would have been, to what great heights he would have taken it. The LIC building that we see today is because of his dream of building a multi-storied building in this city. Now, that is how businesses were starting off in 1949. Indians were getting more and more into business. You had Mr. V. Ramakrishna, ICS officer, who resigned and got into business and started the KCP group, KCP Sugars, KCP Industries, all that. He came into, he got into government servant, giving up government job, giving up government pension, and putting all his money into industry and starting off an industry. So these were all people. But in the 50s, there was a very, very enlightened government in the Madras state at that time. It was still called Madras state at that point of time. K. Kamraj, who was our chief minister, he is the man who really sets Tamil Nadu, or Madras as it was, on the path to prosperity. Kamraj was not a very educated person, but he was filled with that rare commodity called common sense, which is not available to most people. And under him, R. Venkatraman and C. Subramaniam here, and T.T. Krishnamachari in Delhi, together they began working hard to ensure that Tamil Nadu would become a great industrial success. The first industrial estate in India was Guindy Industrial Estate, started in the 1950s. And after that came the Ambattur Industrial Estate. That whole concept of creating industrial agglomerations and ensuring the TVS estate came up in Padi thereafter. And several Indian companies, you find Ashok Leyland came up here, starting up as Ashok Motors, and then started making trucks and buses. And then you had the Murugappa Group, which really made Ambattur an industrial settlement with the setting up of the TI group of companies. All these people were the pioneers of the 1940s and the 1950s. And after them came the TVS group. But before that, I must take you through a story on leather. I told you that leather was what was started by Parry. And I also said that thereafter, leather became one of the very important businesses for Madras state. And you had Alfred Chatterton, whom I said started, making pencils. He's also the man who started Indian Aluminium, which is Indal. He's also the man who fine-tuned the chrome tanning process for making leather commercially. Thereafter, a lot of leather units began to be set up over here. During the Second World War, Chennai emerged as one of the centers of leather export. The British Army's leather was being supplied from Chennai by various companies over here. But post-independence, it was Nayudamma, Y. Nayudamma, whose photograph you see over here, who would really take Chennai to great heights in leather. And he started it because the Central Leather Research Institute was set up over here. And he became its director. And it was he who would give all the leather merchants fresh ideas, technical innovations, advances. And based on that, the entire Arni, Pernambatte, Ambur, all these areas would become leather making localities. And then within the city, you have, of course, Periyamate, which is one of the leather hubs of this city. So together, today, India, I think Tamil Nadu exports around 48% of India's leather. And much of it comes from this belt. It is because of this man, Y. Nayudamma. The TVS group started off in Madurai as a trading entity. In the 1940s, they migrate to Madras, with Madras Auto Services being the first company that they acquire. After that, slowly they get into manufacturing. And by the 1960s, you have Wheels India, Brakes India, Lucas TVS, and Sundaram Clayton coming up. Thereafter, you have Sundaram Fasteners, all pioneered by the 5 sons of the founder. This is TV Sundaramayangar on this side. And on this side, you have T.S. Rajam, T.S. Doraswamy, in the middle, T.S. Krishna, T.S. Santanam, and T.S. Srinivasan. These were the 5 brothers that together took the TVS group to great heights. In this, T.S. Santanam was the financial brain. And while all the other brothers focused on marketing and manufacturing, he decided that there should be a company that will give money to transport operators on easy terms so that they can be financed. No bank was willing to give them money. That is how Sundaram Finance came into existence. And today, it is one of the biggest non-banking financial companies of this entire country. By the 1980s, Chennai was an automotive hub. Today, Chennai makes 3 motor cars every minute, and it makes 1 heavy vehicle every 1.5 minutes. 33% of India's automotive components come from Chennai. In 1983-84, when Maruti was set up in Haryana, can you believe that the first completely knocked down kits of Maruti cars actually came to Madras Harbour? And from here, they were transported to Haryana and they were assembled over there. If we had not constructed a harbour in 1875, where would we have been? Would we have been able to play a role in the Maruti manufacture? At that time, it was believed that Maruti would use only Japanese components. They would not use any of the Indian components. But the Chennai automotive hub went and convinced Maruti with its quality. All of them, MRF, the TVS group, Rane, the Amalgamations group, Murugappa, they all supplied components at various points of time to Maruti, and that is what enabled them to begin exporting later on and then play a great role all over the world. In the 1990s, India liberalized. Because Chennai was already an automotive hub, Ford came and set up its operations over here. Hyundai there followed thereafter. Then today, you name it, most of the automotive components and automobile manufacturers have a presence in and around Chennai, and it is one of the... We talk about Detroit, we don't talk about Chennai. Chennai makes more cars and buses than Detroit does today. Nobody talks about it. That is our South Indian way of remaining humble. We don't boast. We also were an education capital all along, and therefore when the IT industry came, we were able to play our role in that. Today, we are the 3rd largest exporter of information technology because of all that was done to encourage this. Don't forget, We are the medical capital of India, medical tourism capital of India. People from Africa, from the Middle East, from many parts of Europe, they come here for medical treatment. And while I have put up the pictures of Apollo Hospital and Shankar Nethralaya here, let's not forget that we have been in medical practice for more than 300 years. The general hospital that you see today was founded in 1665, and it has been in the same location opposite Central Station from 1777 onwards. There was no Central Station, but General Hospital was already there at that time. The Mental Institute of Mental Health, Kilpauk, has been around for 225 years. The second oldest eye hospital in the whole world is in Chennai, Kannasputri. It was started in 1818 or 1819, and it is celebrated 200 years. The major heart surgeries were completed in the Perambur Railway Hospital. That is the quality on the basis of which Apollo came up as the first private hospital chain and took medical quality of medical service to a completely different level altogether. If Apollo was a profit-making chain, Shankar Nethralaya came up on exactly the opposite platform, making medical treatment affordable to people. And that is how Shankar Nethralaya came up. And today, they are the flag bearers of our medical profession. Last slide. Where would we be without our film and entertainment industry? We were all, I told you about the dancers and the musicians settling down during British times in Madras. Ever since then, music, dance, and drama was exceedingly popular in Chennai city. By early 1900s, you find that the entire area around Waltax Road, Salt Cottors, these places were all sort of filled with drama theaters, Kottakai companies. Then came the silent cinema. Finally, in 1931 came the talking cinema. And after the Second World War, before the Second World War actually, and then slowly after that, came the great studios, Gemini, Vijaya Vahini, AVM, then later Prasad, and they all made Chennai a film capital. Actually, the number of films made in Chennai today is more than the number of films made in Bombay. We may not be the technological capital anymore of films. We were for a very long time. But even today, the volume of the film industry here is probably higher than what it is in Bollywood in terms of the cost of development of films. Of course, the returns are much higher in Mumbai. There is no doubt about it. But film industry is definitely an industry that is not very often recognized, but it plays a huge role in employing several thousands of people in this city. So we will always continue. We will continue this way. We will remain a business capital, hopefully. But we should never lose our competitive edge. And that competitive edge will come only by continuously reinventing ourselves and by ensuring that we always have something new to give by way of product or by way of service or of quality. Thank you so much for your patient listening this evening. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Hello. Everybody
Thank
is
you.
hearing. Thank you. One small addition to our chief guest regarding this why Naidama and CLRA Central Leather Research Institute spoke about. One of our past president, Mr. Nagappa Chettiar, who is pioneer
Of course.
with why Naidama, his full statue, life-size statue is installed in the CLRA, Central Leather Research Institute. So many people of foreign origin, both India and Farida Shoes chairman, Mr. Rafiq Ahmed, praised about his contribution. Not only that, recently we made our Platinum Jubilee celebration with our Venkaiah Naidu, the former, the city vice president of India, Venkaiah Naidu. He recognized, spoke much about his contribution to the leather industry in our Platinum Jubilee celebration recently held in Chennai. And there is a book.
Yes.
See your photograph, the Leather King. That is the designation name given to him, Padma Shri A. Nagappa Chettiar. And interestingly, the Chrome Pet, the name which came from, as we very well know, that than me. It was bought by him at that time as a leather factory, and now it is Balaji Medical Center. I think hospital is there, running there at the present. His family members constructed one industrial estate near Pudukkottai 2 years back. Still, it is running. So I request on behalf of our chamber and Nagapachetiyar family to include his contribution in your future presentations and other things. This is for to add your information from our side and our chamber interest, and most interestingly, the very great thing done by Mr. Nagapachetiyar is he is also involved in Sikkim. The British are used to take it as a leather goods to the market of London market and sell and only give the commission at that time. After the efforts of Mr. Nagapachetiyar, he asked these London people after our independence that we should be treated as exporter, you should importer, and we are raising the invoice. So you should recognize as an exporter. That is the major achievement. Initially, they refused, and he went to other European countries for mobilizing support for this. Then only they come back and surrendered. Then they offered the status, which is a very great thing when we consider this contribution to the leather industry, for which we are enjoying this other now the leather industry whole, which are people export leathers enjoying this status. This is for additional information only. And before vote of thanks by our Honorary Secretary, Mr. David Ravi Kumar, the audience can put forward their questions through chat box, and Aishwarya, please moderate these questions.
Yes, sir.
If
Thank
anything,
you. Yes, sir. There are a couple of questions that we have, and so I would like to go ahead with your permission. Mr. Chandrasekhar, he's asking, so what about newspapers publishing?
Well, that I agree. That's a fantastic topic to talk about. That's a whole industry by itself. The publishing actually comes to, let's not forget that Tamil is the oldest non-European language to be published. And that was done initially by the Portuguese and then by Bartholomew Ziegenbalg, the German priest in Tarangampadi. And after that, that printing press moves to Chennai in Veperi, and that is when printing really starts over here. And by the 1850s, 1860s, you find that lots of Tamil people get into printing, and this entire Broadway, Mint Street, Govindapanayakan Street, this is where a lot of Telugu and Tamil printing presses really come into existence. Starting with that, magazines also start coming into magazines and newspapers start coming in. Prior to that, there were only English newspapers. If you look at it, you had the Madras Mail, and then from 1878 you had the Hindu. It's around the time of the Hindu that you find that the Swadesamitran really comes into existence, and that becomes the first Tamil newspaper. And after that, you've had a whole lot of publishing and printing of magazines, books, and periodicals. I agree, and this is a fantastic question, whoever has posted. And I will make sure that next time I do a presentation, I will include an entire section on publishing and the printing industry. So media definitely has been one of the big businesses of the past. There is no denying that at all.
Thank you, sir. From one of our YouTube viewers, Mr. Sivaraman CK, this is more a statement than a question. Normally, there is regime that British business built in slavery. Your views on that?
I would strongly disagree with that statement. The British did trade in slavery over here, in the sense that from here they were exporting people to the plantations in Guyana, Suriname, Fiji, and other places. So that was going on, and that took quite a while before it was stopped. But you cannot say that the East India Company practiced slavery here. That is an entirely wrong thing, because there was no concept of slavery or bonded labor. On the other hand, up north, you had it practiced by the Indians themselves. But the East India Company, to give them due credit, they did not indulge in slavery here. There is no doubt about that. I would disagree with that statement.
Okay.
They did a lot of wrong things, but slavery was not one of the many wrong things they did.
Okay. A few more questions lined up from our participants. There is Mr. Selva Kumar from Coimbatore. Selva from Coimbatore. He's asking for SMEs, how the opportunity is going to be after the COVID situation.
I wish I knew. I run an SME myself. And I wish I had an answer to that question. At this point of time, no, I wouldn't like to take that question at all. I think we are all at sea, and let us just hope for better days to come.
Thank you, sir. From Mr. Arul Kumar, he says
I
it's
saw
a very
that
good presentation. Yeah. My question is, how Madras language developed?
It's a very interesting question because it had to do with business. Remember that when the English came, they were speaking English. We had translators who had Portuguese and who were speaking in Telugu and in Tamil. The money lenders had come from North India. You had the Sahukars from Rajasthan and Gujarat. So Chennai, right from the beginning, was an amalgamation of many languages. And therefore, the locals quickly evolved a language which was a combination of all these things put together. If you read the biography of Pacheyappa Mudaliar and you read the letters that he wrote, in the 1700s, you find that he was using language which was similar to Madras Bhasha. So, Gabura padti ututaan. In the Gabra is actually a Hindi word, right? So, the letter will begin very formally. Mama Devari Ravargalake Shashtanga Namaskaram. That is how it will start. Then the next line will say, Ingi Nadakum Luti Ellam Nan Epdi Kurvadu Avan Enne Gabura padti utuvitan. Nan ipdi theruvil vandu ninnene, and Bejara Purthu. These are all words that come in the letters of the 1790s. So you realize that this entire language that we call Madras language had to do with the fact that there were people of all communities living over here, and the language keeps evolving continuously. Today's Madras language is not the Madras language that was spoken, say, 40, 50 years ago. New words have come into the lexicon. So it will keep continuing like this.
The amalgamation is not only taken, the amalgamation of so many languages take place, I think, for this Madras Bhasha. Ella language it looks like mini India from those days. Still now it is the only state you can call mini Bharat, means mini India. It is the Tamil Nadu state only. Here everybody from any other states can come, have their business, education, or anything social life here without any disturbances and with full cooperation, without any suppression or oppression. And we recognize them to the topmost level in political, industry, social status. This is the one unique quality in Tamil Nadu. No other state has such a quality, because in any other state, other states people go and employed there and living like a common man, but not able to reach the highest position or in industry, trade, in social life, political, entertainment industry. But it is proved that in all the states of India, Tamil Nadu is the only state which recognize people, invite people, give full freedom for their development, and accept their greatness or the inequality or the knowledge or any expertise, technology wise or in any other form. Tamil Nadu is readily accepting the people. யாதும் ஊரே யாவரும் கேளுன்றது வாய் வார்த்தை இல்லை, இதயபூர்வமாக உணர்ந்து ஆயிரக்கணக்கான வருஷத்துக்கு முன்னாலே சொன்னதே இந்தியா இஸ் ப்ரூவிங் த்ரூ தமிழ்நாடு. But unfortunately, the recognition for that kind activities not come forward. It's unfortunate thing. Just I want to represent this truth here, whether it is connected with or not. Anyhow, I request Mr. David Ravi Kumar to proceed with the vote of thanks.
Sir, we are not able to hear you. Sir, your
Your
Increase the
volume
volume.
has
Can you hear me
yes,
now?
now, yes.
yes, sir, please. Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Ladies and gentlemen, as Honorary Secretary of the Tamil Chamber of Commerce, it is my pleasant duty to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of the President, Mr. Cholanachia Rajasekhar, and the office bearers and executive committee members. In the welcome address and introduction, Mr. Cholanachia Rajasekhar mentioned that Mr. V. Sriram is the true successor of Mr. S. Muttaya, who was a well-known historian and city's best-known chronicler. Mr. Nachiyar also explained the title of the talk, The History of Money-Making, Trade in British Raj to Present. And a big and special thanks to Mr. Venkata Krishnan Sriram, Mr. V. Sriram, for his wonderful talk, which was very informative, interesting, exhaustive on the subject. In his talk, he touched upon various subjects, and I would like to just recap a few things only. He said that money making is not an evil. This has to be mentioned, noted. And the historical details of Madras Patnam, particularly the Seven Wells, was very, very interesting. And he also told how and why the first lighthouse of Madras came into existence. And he told the language connections. In English, catamaran meaning kattumaram, and kakweeks in Dutch meaning kakus or the toilet, and how the businessman became the educationalist like Pachebas Mudaliar, Pachepa Mudaliar. And he also told how the Binami transaction came into existence to the British people doing business. Those who are in the East India Company, they were engaging their relatives to do the Binami transaction. And he very clearly told about the foreign companies like Parry and Company, Mr. Thomas Parry, and Benny and Company, Mr. John Benny, which employed 20,000 workers. And he also told about the harbor coming into existence by the Madras-based business community and the formation of the Madras Chamber of Commerce. He very clearly told about the first line beach, now called Rajaji Salai, having the various mercantile offices like the State Bank of India, then which was earlier the Imperial Bank, then the GPO, and the Rayapuram railway station. And he also told about the Indian Bank coming into existence, how it came in the first Indian Bank, and the Southern India Chamber of Commerce in 1906 and the Tamil Chamber of Commerce in 1944, and the collapse of the Arbuthnot and Company, which encouraged the local business people to come into the picture. And also the government operating the factories for some time and then handing over to the private people to run the same. And the involvement of backward caste people in the business, particularly about the PV condiments, and how the factories and the defense manufacturing facilities and industrial estates came into existence. He very clearly explained about the automobile hub of India, Chennai, medical capital of India, film and entertainment center. And he concluded that we must reinvent ourselves to keep going. It's a very wonderful word he told. We must reinvent ourselves to keep the show going. I especially and very specially thank Mr. Sriram for his beautiful talk and patiently answering the questions put forward by the viewers like Mr. Chandrasekhar, Vice President, Mr. Sivaraman, Mr. Selva, and Mr. Arun Kumar. And when I went through the list of participants, there were about 200 persons had registered for this virtual Zoom meeting. Besides the YouTube viewers, I noticed that it was a rare gathering of people or rare group of viewers in this meeting, like business, companies, industries, government service, professionals like chartered accountants, lawyers, doctors, engineers, and consultants, trade and commerce associations, chambers of commerce. I especially noticed Mrs. Kavita Dutt, president of the Tamil Nadu Council of FICCI, being one of the participants. cultural, social, and sports associations and institutions like YMCA and Weizmann International were also the registered participants for this program. Educational institutions like colleges, academies, and universities, and people from different geographical areas like Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India, and outside India, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, and Pakistan. And this Zoom meeting was conducted under free registration, and it is as a service to the trade and industry. See, now TCC has completed 75 years of service to the trade and industry. It's time the people, the commercial establishment, become members of an organization like this, and which has completed 75 years, to reap the benefits or get the benefits through the TCC for their own business. Before I conclude, I thank the President for giving me this opportunity, and all the office bearers and also the EC members for their cooperation and support of the staff of the TCCC. And last but not the least, Mrs. Aishwarya, the service provider, who has been very, she has been helping us in conducting the Zoom meetings, and this meeting was also arranged very well. I thank Aishwarya for doing these arrangements. வாழ்க தமிழ், வளர்க தமிழ் வர்த்தக சங்கம். Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
You all.
sir.
Paklam, see you.